All right, guys. So, thank you very much, guys, for joining in. A very good evening to each one of you. And I welcome you to day three of this 21 days session. So, till now, if you see, we have seen the basic fundamentals, the history of the Linux, the big picture, and now it's the time to set up our Linux system where we are going to see what are the possible ways to set up the Linux system provided you have the Windows over Windows currently. Okay, so what we have seen till now is the very basic things like the fundamentals of the Linux, and then we looked into the big picture. Now it's the time to get into the action where we are going to see how do we set up the Linux system. Okay, but before moving on to that, let's quickly recall what we have seen yesterday. So yesterday we saw how did the Linux evolve, what really triggered the need for Linux, what was the history of the Linux OS and its tasks. Then we discussed what is free and open source. And finally, we looked into the Linux architecture. Okay, all right. So what we are going to see today is what are the various possible ways to set up the Linux system. So Windows subsystem for Linux is what we are going to see first. That is one of the easiest way to have the Linux with your Windows machine. Next possible way is basically the virtual machine, where we are going to see all the steps which are involved in installing a virtual machine and setting up the virtual machine. Further to this, we need to discuss about the dual boot. So dual boot we won't be discussing today. It will be in the upcoming session because it's going to take lots of time. After that, we are going to look into the browser-based solutions to have the Linux and cloud-based solution. So these are the things which we will be looking into in order to have the Linux running on our systems. Okay, so let's say, for example, most of you guys might be using Windows. So having a Windows, how do we use the Linux as such? So that is what we are going to focus. Okay, so let's now move on. Okay, anything is fine, Malik. If you are using libvirt Virish on Ubuntu, that is perfectly fine. There is no issue as such. Okay, so let's now move on. Let's now move on. So now let's see the possible ways. So as I have already discussed, the possible ways to have the Linux on the Windows machine is Windows subsystem for Linux, the virtual machine. These are the two ways. Another one is a dual boot, where you can basically either get booted up into the Linux or you will get booted up into the Windows. Then we will look into, let's say if I don't want to install, I just want to try a few commands here and there, then you don't need to install anything. You can just have the browser based solutions where the terminal would be available to you and you will be able to practice the commonly used commands. And then there are a cloud based solution where you can have a machine on the system. It's basically on the cloud itself. Okay, so let's now move on. Let's now move on. So the first thing which we are going to look into is Windows subsystem for Linux. Now, what is this Windows subsystem for Linux? Starting Windows 10 onwards, Microsoft basically designed one of the software, basically it made one of the software available, which we call it as WSL. And the whole purpose is that you should be able to run the Linux on Windows in a simplest possible way. Now, prior to this, what people have been using is like they have been using the virtual machine and all for the normal commands and the compilation. And as even Microsoft knows, like Linux has gained lots of popularity. There are lots of tools available on the Linux which are useful to the developers. So they don't want you to move away from Windows. Rather than they want to make it available for you as a part of their Windows platform as such. So this is one of the very simple way to install the Linux, where you don't need much of the hassles. It is just as if you are installing any application on your Windows. So this is one of the simplest way to have the Linux on your Windows machine. So what it does is basically it provides the virtualization environment to Linux, where Windows is the base operating system, and on the top of that, the Linux runs. And this basically is integrated into the Windows system itself as an application. Okay. And here you can have as many different types of Linux you can have. So for example, let's say you are interested in Ubuntu, you can install the Ubuntu. Let's say you want to have the Fedora, you can have the Fedora over here. Let's say you want to have a different flavor, like I can say Mejia kind of thing or Mandriva kind of thing. You can have that flavor as well. So the support is available to install any flavor of Linux over here. Okay, so that is the beauty of this particular system. And you can run your Linux apps along with the Windows tools. So the overall purpose of coming up with this particular idea was Microsoft didn't want that uh, developers should be using another machine for the compilation and all, and they will be using for their emails and all this particular machine. They wanted to make it available everything on this system itself. So Linux has been like increasingly in demand ever since this embedded systems has evolved. Like most of the things, most of the embedded stuffs which you typically do, you do it on the Linux. Okay, on the Windows, of course, the firmware development and all it works. But the moment you go to the complicated things like kind of like where you have the Linux development to be done, and as most of the embedded systems are the embedded Linux based, so you don't need to move away from Windows. That has been the overall intention as such. Okay, so now let's move on. How do we set up the Windows for, sorry, Linux subsystem for Windows? That means WSL. How do you basically set up all this particular stuff? So the idea over here is very simple. I'm going to guide you in a step-by-step manner with the images because I'm not running a Windows, so I can't show you the live demonstration of this particular thing. So I basically have the appropriate images over here, which will help you understand how do you install the WSL on your Windows machine. Okay, so what you need to do over here is first of all, on your Windows 10 or the Windows 11 machine, you need to open the PowerShell as a administrator. So I mean to say like you have a terminal and that terminal you need to open it as the administrator. So you see from the start menu, we are searching for the terminal and over here we are running it as a administrator. So you need to have the administrator privileges in order to in order to install the WSL. That's pretty obvious, right? Whenever you want to install any software, you need to be administrator. You can't do it with a normal user. So run it as an administrator and this will basically open up the PowerShell like this. So you see it is basically a Windows PowerShell and this gets opened up where it will basically give you the command prompt. Okay, so you will open the terminal as an administrator and this will open up the things as a shell for you. Now, next what you are going to do is you are going to basically install the WSL. And for installing the WSL, you just need to type a very simple command over here on the terminal. And the command is going to be WSL hyphen hyphen install. WSL hyphen hyphen install. And when you do that, you will see it will start downloading the WSL kernel. I mean, by default, it will take up Ubuntu. It is going to install the Ubuntu over here. All right. And now further to this, what will happen is once your installation is completed, it's not going to take more than 5 to 10 minutes, guys. And it's very, very fast. It's very, very fast. So within the matter of, I can say 10-15 minutes, at least on my i7 system, it was like very quick. So it just took 10-15 minutes and this was done. And now what happens is you will be asked to reboot your Windows system. So once you have installed it, your changes will come into picture. The final part of the installation will be done where, yes, of course, the internet is required because without internet, things won't be done because it's going to download from the internet. So like it's like a Microsoft store. You see, in a Microsoft store, whatever you want to get, you basically need to have the internet. So internet is a mandatory thing over here. And so now what you will be doing is you will be rebooting your system. Okay, after installing the WSL, you are going to reboot your system. Okay, yes. So now, yeah, that's a good question, Jasprit. Like by default, it is Ubuntu. Then there are certain set of commands available where you can give -d option and you can provide that distribution. Okay, so now basically what you will be doing is uh, over here after reboot it will proceed with the installation. Okay, it will basically proceed with the installation. So as soon as you reboot, you see wsl.exe starts running. wsl.exe will start running and it will resume the previous installation. Now after few minutes what will happen is you see over here which it was showing wsl.exe, this will change to Ubuntu. Okay, this is going to change to Ubuntu. Now, let's say if you are installing Debian or Fedora, you basically need to use the option -d and you basically need to provide the appropriate distribution you are interested in. But most popularly, it's a Ubuntu being used. So by default, Microsoft WSL will just install Ubuntu as such. And you see over here, it is being changed to Ubuntu. Now you need to basically enter your username and the password for the Ubuntu whatever machine you have set up. You need to basically enter your username and the password. And once you enter your username and password, you will see the screen like this. You will see the screen like this, where you are going to see like there are some updates. If they are available, you can update it. So you will now get the terminal. Now, further to this, okay, which version of Ubuntu? Latest. Okay, basically latest with respect to the Microsoft. Okay, so with Microsoft, what is the WSL being set up? Probably it will not be like say for example at present like 24. So it typically will not be 24. It might be 22. Okay, but it depends all on how actually the releases are made from the Microsoft perspective, because not this is not the direct download from the Ubuntu website. Okay, this is basically a tweaked version which you get, which is being integrated with the WSL. Okay, so here you see typically if you check now, you will be able to see probably 22 will be there, but the latest Ubuntu right now is 24. Okay, yes, username and the password you can set it as per your convenience, whatever. So it need not be. So I think it would be mentioned over here. Uh, yeah, yeah, it is mentioned. Username does not need to match your Windows username and password. It can be any. So you can put any username, you can put any password over here. Not necessarily this has to be the Windows username or Windows password. Okay, so this is going to be exclusively only for the Ubuntu. Now, once you have entered the username and password, you are all set. Now, it is always recommended that you perform some updates over here, right? So that is where we will first check the release version. So you see in over at this particular point, no default username password you need to enter. Okay, no default username password. So now if you see Ubuntu 20.04 is the one which is showing right now, when I basically captured those kind of things. And now you need to perform sudo apt update so that whatever updates might be available, it should download those updates. Okay, so after this, your system is ready to be used. What is LSB release? It basically says what is the Ubuntu version you are using currently. Okay, so for example, you want to check what is the Ubuntu version, you can use LSB release -a. Okay, next what you have is basically, let's say now you closed your Ubuntu and you want to rerun this particular Ubuntu. So now what you will be doing is over here, you will be opening a PowerShell. Like let's say you opened a Windows shell, and from there on, you need to see there will be something called the Ubuntu available to you. And you will be clicking that Ubuntu. And after clicking that Ubuntu, what will happen is it will give you the terminal for Ubuntu. So it's as simple as this. So let me just repeat the steps. What you need to do first is you need to open the terminal with the administrator privileges. After entering that, after getting the terminal, put across the installation instruction WSL hyphen hyphen install. This will install your Ubuntu. Then you need to reboot. Once you have rebooted, you will be basically again wsl.exe installation will proceed, and the installation will complete in few minutes. After that, your Ubuntu is ready to do. Yeah, I can't do that in a live session because I don't use Windows. Okay, I use Linux. So that's why I can basically, uh, but you guys can definitely do it. You guys can definitely do these steps over here. So the, these are basically the steps. Just two things: WSSL again underscore underscore install, and another thing is basically just update. And what I will be doing is, since you guys are like interested in setting up the WSL, I have a very nice video. I can say just 10 minutes video, which I referred for my installation, trying this installation on my Linux machine. So what I will be doing is I will be sharing across that video with you guys. Okay, so that you should be ready with your installation. So these are, as I told you, they are not just the kind of like a concept kind of concept building kind of session. Here you should be able to get into the action mode. So I would make sure that after the end of the session, I would be basically sharing across the link with you guys. Okay, which will help you with this particular instructions. Okay, so what is PowerShell? PowerShell is nothing but the terminal. Okay, it's a terminal, Windows terminal. So if you go into the Windows 10 and if you go to the start and search for terminal, when you open that terminal, it will show as a PowerShell. So earlier you used to see there was a very basic command line shell kind of thing was available for the simple command prompt kind of thing was available. Now they have enhanced it to make it better with a PowerShell. So it looks like more like a shell and something like that. Okay, so now someone is asking the question, what is uname hyphen r? Uname hyphen r is the kernel version. Okay, LSB release is the Ubuntu version. Remember, Ubuntu is different from Linux kernel. Okay, Linux kernel is a pure operating system. When you say Ubuntu, it's basically the distribution. So many of the guys don't understand the difference between the distribution and the operating system. Of course, because Microsoft never reveals these kind of stuff. We call Windows as an operating system. But remember, guys, Windows is not the operating system. Windows is basically the operating system plus the user space environment. So operating system is typically the kernel. So here the Linux kernel is the operating system, and what you see around that, that means your applications, your PowerPoint and all, that is the GNU based system. Okay, so you should know the difference between this. Operating system is just the Linux kernel. Ubuntu is the distribution, which provides you all the user level GNU environment. Okay, hope it is clear. Yocto is not a distribution. Yocto is a build system. Okay, so we won't get into the Yocto. It will confuse the matters over here. So it is just the build system. Okay, now let's move on. Let's move on. Now we will be proceeding. Kali Linux is again one distribution. Okay, so likewise you have flavors. Rather than using the term distribution, let me use the term called flavors. There are variety of flavors of Linux. Okay, maintained by the different communities. You have the Fedora, you have the Ubuntu, you basically have the Mandriva, you have the Mesia, Red Hat. So all these are basically the flavors of Linux system. Yes, Linux is just the OS. So Linux is just the OS. Okay. So now, if you ask me, Okay, nothing. We won't discuss anything about the Yocto, guys. Nothing is related to the Yocto over here. Okay. Uh, which is more safe? Actually speaking, see, Linux is meant for a security, Unix-like environment. Yes, exactly. So if you ask me, Ubuntu is the one which is distribution, which provides you all the GUI kind of stuff, and Linux is the kernel. Okay, so now let's move on. Let's move on. Unix is basically the complete Unix actually speaking is the OS. Okay, OS, but again on the top of that GNU is being included. So now, what are the pros and cons of WSL? What are the pros and cons of the WSL? So if you ask me, advantages of the WSL is the simple setup. It's a lightweight. You don't need to install any OS, separate OS or some virtual disk over here. You can use Windows alongside Linux. So what you can do is, typically I have seen nowadays what organizations are doing, they install the WSL, and using the WSL they do the build related stuff where they will be performing all the build related stuff. And typically, as you know, in organization we use the Windows for our emails, for our meetups and all those kind of things. So typically WSL is very popular in the organization. What is the disadvantage of WSL? Since it's a virtualization, it's not that the Ubuntu is directly running on your machine. So obviously it would be a bit slower. For example, let's say when you build something, it will be a bit on the slower side because it's not the native Linux distribution. Apart from this, what I have other things which I have observed is, like when we move on to the something like drivers. Let's say you want to move on to the drivers. Typically WSL doesn't allows you to load the drivers, unload the drivers. It's not that straightforward. I tried it, I couldn't get it. I think there is some way out available. Another thing is basically this particular OS which you get, like the kernel, Linux kernel, you get it, it has been tweaked by the Windows guys. So if you want to basically have the drivers and all those kind of thing, let's say you want to modify that kernel, it's not that straightforward. So typically when you will get into the driver development, typically when you are doing it on the PC, it will make things a bit complicated. Okay, so as such, like I have never used WSL because even when I was working with organizations, we used to have a separate machine, separate Linux machine to which we used to connect. So everybody was being provided the laptop and the machine which was Ubuntu. So as such, I had don't have much experience with the WSL from the practical perspective. Right from the beginning of my career, I have been using the Linux machine as such. Okay, so now let's move on. Let's move on. Now we are going to come to the second way by which you can have the Linux machine being set up. So here again, I am going to show you the things in a step-by-step manner. Okay, so now WSL was basically something which was inbuilt in the Windows itself. But virtual machine is are basically the third party platforms. Like you get the platforms as a virtual box from Oracle, then you get a VMware kind of thing, and then you get another platforms which you can use. Typically from the Windows, there is one platform called Hypervisor, which allows you to run the guest operating system. So here what you need to do is you basically need to download something like a Oracle VirtualBox. You will be installing it, and on the and on this Oracle VirtualBox you will be installing your Ubuntu. So we are going to see now the steps which are involved in the virtual machine. Okay, so what is virtual machine? It's a software emulation of the physical computer. So what you are doing over here is you are projecting this platform as if it's like a PC. So, like to any operating system, you are projecting, okay, this is the whole PC which you have got, where you basically allocate some RAM, where you allocate some hard disk, where you allocate the resources, and whatever operating system you install, that operating system feels as if it is running on the it is running on the physical machine as such. So that's why it's the emulation of the physical computer. Next, it allows you to run the multiple operating systems with that physical simulation. So what you can have is basically you can have a multiple um, versions of say Ubuntu being installed, Fedora being installed, and all those kind of things being installed over here. And next, the Linux will be running as a guest operating system, as we will be seeing in a little while. So available virtual machine platforms are Oracle VirtualBox. Then you have the VMware Workstation, and another one which comes from the Microsoft. It is Hyper-V. Okay, Hyper-V. So these are the typical things which are very popular. And most of the times, what I have seen most of the guys using is the Oracle VirtualBox. It's a simple one, and typically people use this Oracle VirtualBox. Hyper-V also some of the guys use, but most of the times I have seen using Oracle VirtualBox as such. So that's why in this session, I am going to show you how do you set up your Oracle virtual machine. Okay, so let me just check if you guys are clear with this particular stuff. Just drop clear in the chat box if you guys are with me. Okay, thank you very much, Prashant. Thank you very much, Yanmala, Prabhakar, Suresh, Venu, Shubham. Thanks for maintaining this much level of energy. Okay, VM is not clear. Okay, so let me again explain what is VM. So VM is nothing but as if whatever physical machine is there, that is being basically emulated. Okay, so it is like you're running a software like a Oracle VirtualBox, and this Oracle VirtualBox shows up as if it's like a physical machine. Okay, but it's emulated, as you know, you are directly not running on the machine. So now let's move on. So let's see how do we install or set up the virtual machine. So first what you need to do is you need to download the Oracle Virtual Box. We need to download the Oracle Virtual Box. So for that, what you need to do is you can visit www.virtualbox.org, and there you are going to find out Oracle VM Virtual Box. Okay, so you will basically click this particular link which is being shown over here, this particular thing, and here you will be given the instructions to download the virtual box. Remember, this virtual box is like a software. Like you get an exe file, you install that exe file. So for Windows, you will get the exe file. So you can download that exe, and then what will happen is you can select which platform this virtual box is for. So you see, we are going to select the Windows. If you have a Windows machine, this virtual box is going to run on Windows. So you will select the exe file. But let's say on the Linux, we want the virtual box. So you can have the Linux related stuff. So it is available for Windows, Mac OS, Linux distributions, and then for Solaris 11. So typically what you will be doing is we will be downloading this for the Windows platform. Okay, so you can normally download, just you can just click it and it will give you the exe file. Okay, so now once you download this thing, you need to run that virtual box. So basically it is something like you download the exe, you directly run it. So typically VirtualBox doesn't need to be installed. It basically simply needs to run. So once you basically click that exe file, the Oracle VirtualBox will basically be running. Okay, now what you need to do is over here it is showing Ubuntu 20.04, Windows 10, Windows 11, something like that. But in when you download your VirtualBox and when you run it, you will see it will be empty. It will show no machine. There is no machine. But over here, there are already three machines which are showing up for you. It will be empty. So now we are going to see how do we proceed with setting up this particular Oracle virtual box so that we can perform the Ubuntu installation on this. So remember, this is just the platform. You have just got the platform. This is not the Linux platform. Okay, this is just the platform, the software which you are running. Now you will install the Linux on this platform. Okay, so now what we will be doing is we need to download the Ubuntu. You already downloaded the virtual box is running. That's fine. Now to this we need to provide the Ubuntu installation disk, and that's where you will be next downloading the Ubuntu. So what you will be doing is you will be visiting ubuntu.com, and then here it will ask you, okay, Ubuntu, if you want to download, you just need to type Ubuntu download or Ubuntu, and it will basically take you to the corresponding screen like this. So at the time of capturing these particular images, I had 22.04. Okay, 22.04. So whatever is LTS, what is LTS? Long term support. Long term support. That means for 4 years or 6 years, there would be a support provided to you and the updates will be available. So we will say like we want 22.04, and this will basically download the ubuntu.iso file. Okay, it will download ubuntu.iso file for you, which will be typically around 4 GB. Okay, it will be around 4 GB size. You see, over 3.4 GB. So sometimes it can be anywhere between 3 to 4 GB as such. So once this download is completed, what you need to do next is you will be setting up your virtual machine. Okay, so remember, let me just repeat the steps. First, you will download your Oracle VirtualBox. After downloading the Oracle VirtualBox, run your Oracle VirtualBox. And to this Oracle VirtualBox, we want to provide the Ubuntu image. Okay, so what you will be doing, you will be downloading the Ubuntu, and this will give you the ISO file. So there are 2 steps, 3 steps overall. Download the virtual machine, run the virtual machine, download the Ubuntu. This is what we have seen till now. Now what we are going to do is we are going to install this Ubuntu which we have downloaded into the virtual box. So you can now think virtual box is like a separate machine which is available to you, on which we are going to install the Ubuntu. Okay, is it making sense to everyone? Is everyone clear on these particular steps? Okay, thank you very much, Prashant, Jagan, Sam, Danush Kumar, Prithvi, Raju. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for being responsive. So that is what really acts as a booster for me and keeps my energy level high. Thank you very much. Okay, so last slide. Let me just show you the last slide. So last slide is something like this. You launch the Oracle virtual machine, and here it will say there is no machine. See, here it already had 3 virtual machines being already available, but here for you it will be empty. It would be blank. No machine will be there. Okay, when you download it. Now what will happen is you will download it, and this will give you the Ubuntu, whatever image you have downloaded, the ISO file. Okay, the ISO file. Now let's see how do we install the Ubuntu on the VirtualBox. So here I'm going to show you very critical steps which you need to remember. Okay, so when you are basically installing, you need to be careful about these steps, because otherwise what will happen is something will not work and you will get stuck. Okay, so uh, no, not high RAM. Typically, see 4 GB nowadays, like 30 to 16 GB, 32 GB is very common, right? So typically 4 GB should be good enough. Okay, yes. What is the system requirement to download it? See, typically I have run the virtual box on the 4 GB of RAMs as well. So this should not be an issue as such. Okay, but nowadays, see, all the systems are available at least with a 8 GB or 16 GB kind of thing. So that should be good enough. Okay, so now let's move on. Let's move on. Installing Ubuntu on VirtualBox. So let's see what are the steps involved here. So first of all, what you are going to do is you are going to select new. When you open the Oracle Virtual Box, you are going to select new over here. And this is what is going to open up a pop-up or dialog box where you need to open, where you basically need to select where your virtual machine should be installed. See, typically what I prefer is typically prefer to put them in a D drive. Okay, I basically intend to put them in a data kind of drive. I don't want to typically put them in a C drive, because C drive typically is your operating system related stuff. So I basically tend to separate out this my data part of things and the kind of like operating system like Windows part of things. So that's why typically I select another drive. But let's say you don't have a D drive, perfectly fine, no worries, you can do it on the C drive. But what happens is the biggest problem is when, let's say, your Windows gets corrupted, for example, like due to some reason, if the Windows is corrupted or due to some virus, you basically need to reinstall, even these things will go away. That is the biggest problem. Okay, so that's why, like, typically, whatever is my data part and all, I typically put it in a different partition. So after that, what you need to do is, once you basically say this is my virtual machine, you basically need to select how much of the memory you are going to assign to this particular machine. So here always it will basically tell you that this will be like this is the limit till which you should go. After going beyond this particular point, it might degrade your performance. So you see, till green point, if you select, that should be good. Okay, don't go beyond this green point. See, there is nobody preventing you to do so, but what happens is sometimes, let's say, if your virtual machine is consuming too much of the memory, your system might get hang. So here we are saying, making sure that at least like 1 GB of the RAM is available for the system related activities so that it doesn't takes over everything. Okay, so now Swapnil is asking basically if we already have the WSL, why do we need the virtual machine? So Swapnil, what happens is when you basically use the WSL, it has got the limitations. As I told you, basically you will be restricted if you are doing a driver development for your machine. If you are learning the device drivers, it won't be simple to do the things on the WSL because it will be dependent on the Linux. It will be dependent on the Windows tweaked Linux kernel. Okay, so what we want is basically, let's say you want to do something like this. I want to download the Linux kernel directly from the kernel.org. I want to install that particular kernel on the WSL. You won't be able to do. So all the advanced operations you won't be able to do on the WSL. WSL is only meant for compiling your code. It is just meant for just build the system kind of thing and running some basic applications, Linux application, nothing more than that. But if you are into the core development, where on the PC itself, you basically need to have your new Linux version. For example, see WSL, if it is saying 20.04, and let's say you are basically interested in the kernel version 6.5 as of now latest, you are being again restricted by the Windows. Probably Windows might not have that at particular time. So that's the reason you might want to switch to the virtual box. So that's an whole thing. Okay, it's okay. So that is the whole part. So this is like a full-fledged. This will give you a feel of the full-fledged system as such. Okay. So hope it is clear now. Okay, yeah. So I prefer VirtualBox actually speaking when I do the driver development and all. I'm not comfortable with a WSL and all. Okay, so now let's move on. Now let's move on. So next you need to select the virtual hard disk. What kind of hard disk you want to like? It's basically it will show up as if it's like a hard disk. Okay, so you need to select that. So recommended disk size, you see it is saying 10 GB. At least you need to have a 10 GB over here. Now what we have is basically we'll be selecting the hard disk image type. So I typically select the file type over here. Then you will be selecting dynamically allocated. Now, what is this dynamically allocate? So see what happens is most of the times uh, typically, let's say you selected 20 GB or 30 GB, but now whatever things you are running, you require more of the space. So if you basically put it fixed size over here, after that extending becomes a bit difficult. So during the installation itself, you keep it dynamic. That means if it is growing, I will allow it to grow. So it is highly recommended that you select the disk which can grow on the need basis, which can grow on the need basis. Next, what you will be doing is you will be basically selecting over here like how much size you want. So right now, they say for example, I want 100 GB over here. I've selected 100 GB. I have 2 terabyte of the space over here, and 100 GB is what I am basically selecting for this. But you can select 50, 60 GB, that should be fine. Okay, but if your build applications and all those things are like very heavy on hard disk where you will be storing more, then you can put 100 GB typically. Okay, and after you have basically done this, 100 GB is very nominal. I can say you can put 100 GB. Even if you have a 1 terabyte, at least 900, 100 GB you will be available. So that 10% is not a big deal. Okay, now what we will be doing is once we have allocated this hard disk, we are now going to set up the virtual machine. So first what we did was, the first step was basically selecting all the, I can say, the hardware attributes for this virtual machine, like how much of the RAM we will be using, how much of the hard disk we will be using. So we are setting the basic infrastructure. Now, next, what we will be doing is we will be proceeding with installation of this Ubuntu. Okay, so we are going to go to this particular machine. You see Ubuntu 22.04, which we have just set up the hard disk and the RAM, which we have set up for, and then we are now going to select our Ubuntu over. So there, these are basically the general settings which we'll be doing. So you just select like where will be the folder located. Okay, so now what will happen is, okay, so for everyone's information, guys, whatever I'm explaining you over here, I will share across the corresponding video for that. So from like whatever I referred during the installation of the WSL and the Oracle VirtualBox, I'm going to share across that video with you so that you can go ahead and proceed with the installation. Okay, so need not worry, because this kind of thing is not possible for me to show you practically, and this will basically load my system when the installation and all is going on. So that's why I don't want to uh, have any disruption in the meeting here. Okay, so now what you will be doing is, next step, you will be selecting what is the CPU. So just select whatever is the default available. You don't need to do much thing over here. And now comes the part where you will be providing the image for the Ubuntu. Like whatever Ubuntu you downloaded, that image you are going to install now. So on the virtual box, you are installing the Ubuntu now. Okay, so let's see how do we do it. So you see right now, if you go to this particular storage, it is showing everything is empty. And here we are going to create a disk file. And here we need to now select the Ubuntu image, that 3.4 GB, which was being downloaded. We are going to select that. And as soon as you select that, so this is something like this, guys. So if just to give you an idea, this is something like this. Let's say you have the machine which has the hard disk, and the things are kind of like empty. There is nothing installed. So what you will do, typically you will put the CD-ROM, or you will be putting a USB drive over there. So on the similar lines, ISO will serve as if it's like a external disk or external source from which the installation should be done. Hope you guys are able to correlate. So when you perform the installation of any Windows system or um, Linux system, what you will be doing, you will be plugging the USB drive, you will be plugging the USB drive, or you will be putting the CD-ROM. Nowadays, mostly it is like a USB pen drive which you will be putting. And then that particular pen drive will have the installation files, like Windows installation file. So on the similar lines, to the virtual machine, you are providing this file as an installation media, something which from which you can install the Ubuntu. Hope it is making sense to everyone. Just drop clear in the chat box if you guys are clear with this stuff, what we are trying to do. Okay, thank you very much, Prashant, Swapnil, Sheetal, Sai Krishna. Thank you very much, guys. Okay, so now once you select the installation media, once you select the installation media, n- now it will start installing the things. Okay, so let's see what happens. So you selected this image, and then you will basically leave rest of the settings as is, and you will click OK. You will click OK. So you see, this is showing as if it's like a live CD or something like this. Like this image is like your CD or something like that. Now, what will happen is you will proceed with start. After you have selected that, you are going to click start. And after selecting start, it will give you the options like try or install Ubuntu. Now from here on, the things will seem more like you have put the CD-ROM, and from the BIOS, you select it, you want to boot up from the CD-ROM, and then it is giving you the option try or install Ubuntu. Okay, and now you will proceed with option number one, try or install Ubuntu. And here it will start copying the relevant files to the disk. And finally, what will happen is the installation will start. So it will give you two options. Do you want to try the Ubuntu? So it is in the RAM. Okay, all the files, everything will be in the RAM. So you can just try out how the Ubuntu works and all those things. Okay, so ISO is like a CD-ROM kind of extension. Okay, which you basically use to burn the files. So it's like burn the CD-ROM with the ISO images. So it's a file system which is for the CD-ROMs. So now what you will do, Ubuntu, install Ubuntu. And once you basically give install Ubuntu, it will ask you, okay, what kind of keyboard do you want? So let's say we will select English US, and then we'll select installation type, what installation we want. So you can select them all so that all the updates and everything gets installed. So normal installation with download updates and while installing Ubuntu, and download some third-party softwares from the graphics. Okay, for the graphics and the Wi-Fi hardware. Otherwise, what will happen? Typically, your Wi-Fi and all might not work on your Ubuntu. So here we wanted everything so that all our hardware is good to go. Next, what we will be doing is we are going to select installation type as erase the disk and install Ubuntu. Now, what happens is this is basically the thing which is like where the people, where the guys who will be inexperienced will get a bit intimidated. This will say this will delete all your programs, documents, photos, music, and any other files in the all the operating system. Now, you need to remember, guys, here, it just refers to the hard disk which you have provided to the virtual sync. So selecting this option doesn't mean your Windows will go away. Okay, so you are on the safer side when you select this option, because remember, the disk, the machine for this particular Ubuntu is whatever your virtual machine which you have set up, where you have put 100 GB of the hard disk, 4 GB or 8 GB of RAM. So that is basically the machine for this Ubuntu. So it's talking of that particular disk image which you have selected, that 100 GB. It's not going to erase any data on the Windows. So you can safely proceed. But yes, in the next session, when we will be discussing about the Ubuntu, don't select this option. Let's say you are basically discussing about the dual boot. So in the dual boot, don't select this option. I will guide you on that thing on Monday when we'll be meeting up. There I will be basically explaining you the things like erasing the disk means what. Okay, like whether we should select that or not. So dual boot we will be discussing in the next session. Now, what we will be doing is we will select erase the disk and install Ubuntu over here. You can safely proceed. There is nothing to be scared about this warning, because this is just going to select that virtual disk. Next, what you have is you will be setting up your username, your computer name, and all those kind of thing, and you will be setting up your password. So you will set up the username and the password, and finally you will proceed, and this will complete your installation. So it's very, very simple and straightforward. See, Ubuntu installation or any GNU, any of your distribution installation is not that complicated. So what you will be doing is you will typically start keep it running, and within 15 to 20 minutes, this installation will be done. And you are good to go. And here you need to reinstall, sorry, restart your virtual box. Okay, you don't need to restart your machine. Okay, there is no need to restart your complete Windows system, Windows machine. You just need to restart your virtual box. And once you basically restart, it will show up something like this. Now you see you need to log in with a password which you have set. Okay, and now you are good to go. And now it is always recommended to install the updates. Like once you have logged in with your username and the password which you set in the last step, you are good to go. You can open the terminal and execute this command sudo apt update, so that whatever updates are available should be installed over here. Okay, that is what you need to do here. Till this point, the steps are clear, guys. Let me just check if the steps are clear. Okay, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks, Sheetal, Weber. Okay, there are some queries. Let me see what are the queries. Okay, so yeah, so anyone who is worried about these steps over here, like quickly what I have explained, and they are not able to follow, as I already told, in the WhatsApp group, I'm going to share across the videos, the complete videos for this particular steps, where you can follow those instructions and perform the installation. Okay, for the WSL also, I will share across the link. And for VirtualBox also, I'm going to share across the link. So don't worry, you should be able to install. Okay, so now what we will be doing is we will proceed. Okay, which is efficient, dual boot or virtual machine? So I would say dual boot is much better. Virtual machine unnecessarily, sometimes it loads your system a lot. So I don't prefer virtual machine. I basically I use the this one dual boot. I prefer dual boot. On my system also it's a dual boot. I prefer using the Linux. Okay, so now there is another important stuff which I basically want you to take care of. Okay, one more setup was there. Drag and drop. Okay, it should be available now. Okay, so now there will be few additions. Sometimes you might face the problems that your virtual box will come in a very small window, which you can't basically put it to the full screen. So that problem most of the guys face. So that's why I thought of adding this particular stuff. So virtual box cast additions. Okay, so here what we will be doing is we will be going into the devices. So in your virtual box, you will be going into the devices. You will say install cached additional CD image. And then you will basically open a terminal, open this thing in a terminal. This will give you a virtual box removable disk kind of thing, which you will open in a terminal. And then what you will do is in the terminal, you just need to run /autorun sh. Okay, this /autorun sh. Then you basically would be prompted for the root privileges. Once you provide that particular password, root password, you are good to go and your things will work fine. So let me just summarize what all different steps we have seen for the virtual machine. So first of all, you will download the virtual box from the Oracle. Then you, for this particular virtual box, you will have to set up what is the hard disk required, what is the kind of RAM required. Further to this, you will download the Ubuntu. You will get the ISO file, which may be between 3 to 4 GB. Once you have downloaded that, then you go to the VirtualBox settings, and there you are going to select .iso file from which the installation needs to be done. And then you will select start. This will start your ISO image, and then it will ask for installation. You install it, which will take 10 to 15 minutes. Once the installation is complete, perform the updates, and then you install the additional things which are required to have a full screen. So that's what are the steps. Now, what I will be doing is after this session, I will share across couple of links with you. One for setting up the WSL, another one for setting up the virtual box. And you can try out both of these things on your systems. Okay, so with this, we have come to the end of this particular session. And dual boot, yes, dual boot, we are going to cover in the upcoming session. Okay, because that will take time. Okay, so dual boot, we will start from the upcoming session. Okay, all the links will be shared in the WhatsApp group. Don't worry. Both the links I will be sharing it in the WhatsApp group right after this session. Okay, and so with that, we have come towards the end of this particular session where we saw how do we set up the Linux machine. So we have seen two different ways. One is Windows subsystem for Linux and another one is the virtual machine. In next session, we are going to provide a dual boot. We are going to learn about the dual boot. We are going to look into the browser based solutions and the cloud based solutions. And once we are done with this, we are also going to move on to the Linux usage fundamentals. That means we are going to learn about the directory structure and all those things in the upcoming session. All right. So with that, we have come towards the end of this particular session. Okay. So thank you very much, guys. I will share across all the links with you. So bye bye. Thanks a lot.